The sky above was dark and heavy. A cold wind blew through the busy human marketplace. People moved quickly, wearing thick coats and speaking in short, sharp voices. It was just another day for them, but for her, it was life or death. The alien woman stood in the shadows between two tall buildings. Her silver skin was covered in dirt. Her cloak was torn and barely hanging on her thin frame. Her long fingers trembled as she held her small daughter close, trying to keep her warm. She had not eaten in 5 days. Her stomach ached. Her mouth was dry. Her head spun every time she stood too fast. Her child, no more than 4 cycles old, was weaker than ever. The girl's breathing was shallow. Her tiny hand clutched her mother's chest, eyes closed, lips cracked. "I have to do something," the woman whispered to herself. She looked toward the market stands. Humans sold fruits, bread, hot soup. The smells made her dizzy. Her sharp, alien eyes scanned the crowd. She didn't want to steal, but her child would die if she didn't act. No one saw her as she crept forward. Her steps were light, her breathing soft. She waited near a cart full of bright yellow fruits. One human vendor turned his back for just a second. That was enough. Her hand moved fast. One fruit. She grabbed it and slipped it into her cloak. But luck was not on her side. A loud beep filled the air. The fruit had a hidden scanner. A red light flashed. The vendor turned and shouted, "Thief, stop her!" Guards appeared instantly. 2 strong human men in black armor raised their stun batons. People gathered around to watch. Some pulled out, their comm devices to record. The alien woman froze. She didn't run. She couldn't. Her child was still sleeping in her arms. One guard moved forward. "You tried to steal. You know the penalty." "I was hungry," she said quietly. "Not our problem." The man raised his baton high, aiming for her arm. She closed her eyes, bracing for pain. But it didn't come. A strong hand grabbed the guard's wrist. The crowd gasped. It was a human man, tall, broad-shouldered, with grease on his jacket and tired eyes. He wore no uniform, but he stood with calm power. "Put it down," the man said. The guard blinked. "She's a thief. You know the law." "I'll pay," the man said, pulling a few credits from his pocket. "The fruit's worth, what, 2 credits? Here, done." "That's not how it works." "She's with me," the man said firmly. "My guest." The guards looked at each other. They didn't want trouble with a respected colony citizen. "Fine," one muttered. "But next time she's not so lucky." They left. The man turned to the alien woman. She stared at him in silence. Her lips were shaking. Her eyes were full of confusion and fear. She couldn't understand. Why would a human help her? "I'm Jace," he said softly. "Engineer. I work at the mech yard." She didn't answer. He looked at the child in her arms. "She looks sick," he said. "Come with me, I have food. Heat, you can rest." Still she said nothing. She took a step back. "I won't hurt you," he added. "But if you stay out here, your daughter might not see the morning." She looked down at the little face against her chest. A tear fell. She nodded. Jace led her through back alleys to a small metal home. It was old and rusty, but clean. Inside was warm. A heater glowed in the corner. The air smelled like oil and stew. He brought her a bowl. She stared at it for a long time before taking a bite. Then another. And another. She didn't speak. Not even a thank you. But her eyes said it all. Relief. Exhaustion. Confusion. Why did he help her? She sat near the heater, her daughter now wrapped in a real blanket. Jace watched quietly. He didn't ask her name. He didn't ask where she came from. He just said, "You can sleep here tonight. You're safe now." She didn't trust him. But, for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel completely alone. The alien woman did not sleep that night. She sat on the floor beside the heating unit, her eyes always half open, her body ready to run. Even with her daughter finally resting in a warm blanket, her mind could not rest. She had known too many traps, too many false kindnesses. No one gave without expecting something in return. At least, not in her world. And this was not her world. Jace had gone to the other room. She could hear him moving, not quietly but not carelessly either. Like someone who had nothing to hide. The smells of warm soup and burning metal filled the house. This was the home of a man who worked with his hands, not someone rich, but someone who built things. Honest things. In the morning, he returned, with simple food, warm flatbread, protein cubes, and something sweet he called jam. She didn't touch it. "You can eat," Jace said gently. "No tricks here?" She looked at him. He had short dark hair, messy, with lines under his eyes like he hadn't slept properly in weeks. His hands were rough, like he had worked on machines all his life. But his voice was calm, and his eyes weren't cruel. He noticed her hesitation and backed away. No pressure. Just thought you'd want something before the kid wakes up. Then he sat down by his broken heater and started fixing it, whistling softly to himself. No questions, no demands, no sudden movements. The woman slowly picked up the bread and began to eat. Her daughter woke up an hour later, coughing lightly. But her color looked better. When she saw Jace, she tried to hide behind her mother. He raised both hands with a gentle smile. "Hey there. I'm Jace," he said softly. "I fixed your blanket." It was full of holes. The child didn't answer, but stared at him with wide, curious eyes. The alien woman tightened her grip on her daughter. "She has no name?" Jace asked. The woman paused, then spoke for the first time since last night. "Leary." Jace smiled. "That's a pretty name." She said nothing more. Later that day, Jace began repairing a small robot unit in the corner of the room. Sparks flew, but he didn't seem to mind. The alien woman watched him closely. He was quiet, focused. Not once did he look at her in a way that made her feel small or owned. Finally, she asked, "Why?" He looked up. "Why what?" "Why help? Me?" Jace scratched his head. "I don't know. Just felt wrong what they were about to do. Cutting someone's arm off for a fruit? That's not justice." She narrowed her eyes. "You risked your place in the colony. For me. For a stranger." Jace shrugged. Maybe the colony needs a reminder that rules don't mean much without kindness. She didn't know what to say to that. That night, as the stars lit the window, Jace cooked a basic stew and set 3 bowls. She didn't refuse this time. Leary even gave a small smile as she tasted the hot food. Jace watched them with quiet joy. "I used to have a sister," he said suddenly. "She had that same look, always scared, always watching the door. She didn't make it." The alien woman looked up. "She died?" He nodded slowly. "War. A useless one. She was caught in the middle. Since then, I try not to look away when someone needs help." There was silence between them after that, but not the cold kind, the understanding kind. Later, as Jace set up a small sleeping mat for himself in the corner, the alien woman whispered, "My name is Ko." He turned toward her. "That's a strong name," he said with a smile. She looked at her daughter, now asleep with a small smile on her face. For the first time in years, Kale felt something she thought was dead inside her. Hope. Maybe. Just maybe. This human wasn't like the others. Maybe he wasn't waiting to take something. Maybe he was just giving, and that frightened her more than anything else, because it meant she might start to care. Kyle sat by the window, her eyes following every movement outside. Though the metal house was quiet, her mind was full of noise, memories, warnings, fears. She had lived through too many lies, too many fake smiles. She knew better than to trust anyone, even a kind human like Jace. He had offered food, warmth, and a safe place. But what did he really want? Trust was not something she could give. She watched as Leary, her daughter, slept peacefully under a blanket too big for her small body. For the first time in months, her little girl wasn't coughing or shivering, and yet Kale's body was tense, her claws half extended under her sleeves. She had been born in a world where kindness was always followed by a chain. In the other room, Jace worked on a damaged circuit board. Sparks popped every now and then, but he didn't seem bothered. He worked with focus, mumbling to himself, sipping cold coffee, wiping sweat off his brow with the back of his hand. Kyle stared through the half-open door. He hadn't locked them in. He hadn't asked for her real name again. He hadn't even touched her. Strange. By evening, Kale heard a knock on the door. Her heart froze. Her hand reached for a broken pipe hidden under the floor panel. Jace opened the door. It was a boy, maybe 15 years old, dropping off a package. "Parts you ordered, sir." Jace thanked him and closed the door. He didn't even glance at Kale, who had already moved closer, silent and watchful like a predator. "You expecting someone dangerous?" he asked lightly. Kyle didn't reply. She slowly returned to the corner of the room where Leary was now drawing with a stub of chalk on the floor. "She's a good kid," Jace said. "She's not a pet," Kyle replied coldly. Jace raised an eyebrow, but didn't argue. Instead, he sat on the floor across from her. "Do you want to leave?" he asked gently. Kale blinked. "You don't have to stay here if it makes you feel trapped. I just thought maybe you needed a place where you don't have to run." She didn't answer, because deep down, she didn't know. Later that night, as Leary slept again, Kale stood in the kitchen, staring at the small heater glowing orange. Her hands were shaking, not from cold, but from the storm inside her chest. She turned suddenly, her voice sharp. "Dow, you think I'm weak?" Jace looked up from his tools. "No. You think I need saving?" "I think you needed help. For now. Everyone does sometimes." Kale laughed bitterly. "In my world, needing help is shame. It's better to die with your pride than live in another's mercy." Jace stood slowly, dusting off his hands. "Well, this isn't your world anymore. And I'm not your enemy." Kale looked away. "Then why don't you ask me for something?" she whispered. "Most men would have. Food isn't free. Shelter isn't free. You want something. Everyone does." Jace shook his head. "I don't want anything." She turned toward him, her voice trembling with anger and confusion. "Then why? Why me? There were others. Humans. Children with cleaner faces. Why did you save me?" Jace walked over and looked her in the eyes. "Because no one else did." Kale's lips parted, but no words came. She turned her head, and for the first time in years, she cried quietly, like someone who forgot how. She didn't sleep that night either, but not because of fear, because her walls were cracking, and that was even scarier. In the morning, Kale found a pile of old clothes folded neatly beside her. Not fancy, but clean and warm. A note rested on top in Jace's awkward handwriting. "You're free to go or stay. No debt here, just be well. Jace." She held the note in her hands for a long time. Outside, wind howled. Inside, her daughter was smiling again, and Kale was no longer sure if this was a cage or the first open door she had seen in her life. Night fell again. This time the silence in the small metal house was softer. The sharp edge of fear had dulled just a little. Leary slept peacefully, her hand curled under her cheek. Kyle sat beside her, awake, watching the stars through a small cracked window. But inside her a different storm brewed. She had seen too much, felt too much. And now this human, this kind, strange man, was breaking something inside her she thought was long dead. Jace returned from the workshop at the back of his home, grease on his shirt, a tired look in his eyes. He didn't say much, just poured himself a cup of tea and sat down near the heater. Kale turned her face away, her body tensed without reason. She was used to rough men, to orders shouted, to hands grabbing, but Jace was none of those things, and that made her feel exposed. "Your daughter's looking stronger," he said, gently breaking the silence. "She always was," Kyle replied. "She just never had a chance to show it." Jace nodded. "Like her mother." Kyle looked at him sharply. But there was no joke in his voice, just quiet truth. That made her look away again. Later, Kyle stood to clean the old blanket. As she bent forward, the fabric of her tunic slipped down slightly. Just for a second. But it was enough. Jace froze. A wide scar ran across her back, deep and jagged, like she had been lashed with metal wire. There were more beneath it. Some healed badly, some never really healed at all. Kale straightened, sensing his eyes. She turned slowly. "Did you see?" she asked coldly. Jace didn't deny it. "Yes." She stared at him, her expression unreadable. "Want to know how I got them?" He shook his head. "Only if you want to tell me." She stared for a long moment, then sat down, and for the first time, she spoke of it. "They took me when I was 15, she said. "Raiders. My clan was destroyed. My parents died that night." She paused, her voice flat but heavy. "They sold me to a slave pit on Bexos 9. I worked in fire tunnels, carried metal rods with my bare hands. If you dropped one, they burned you. If you slowed down, they whipped you. If you fought back, they broke your bones." Jace didn't speak. She went on. "I ran away 3 times. They caught me every time. After the last time, they branded me." She touched the back of her neck. "Said I was damaged property. Not worth selling." Her eyes drifted to the heater. "But someone bought me anyway. He said I was cheap, that I could clean his floors. He had a son. He liked to test his strength on me." Her voice lowered. "I stayed because I was pregnant. I didn't want them to take the baby." She touched her daughter's blanket, her fingers soft now. "I escaped when Leary was born. I ran, hid, starved, lied, for 5 years." Her voice cracked for the first time. "Until you stepped in." Jace's hands tightened into fists on his lap. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. She gave a hollow laugh. "You didn't do it." "No, but others like me did. Humans." "Yes," she whispered. "But you were the only one who stopped them." The fire crackled. For a long time there was no sound except the small pops of heat. Then Kale looked at him again. "You don't want to touch me?" she asked suddenly. Jace looked confused. "What?" "You saw my scars, my history. You fed me. Let me stay, but you haven't asked for anything. Not even once. So what is it? Do you think I'm broken, unworthy, disgusting?" Jace stood slowly and walked over. He sat on the floor near her, not too close. "I think you're brave." She blinked. "I think you survive things no one should, and you still protect your child, still fight. You're not broken, Kale." He looked into her eyes. "You're a warrior. One of the strongest I've ever met." Kale's lips trembled. She looked away. "Don't say things you don't mean." "I meant every word." That night, Kale didn't sleep on the floor. She sat near Jace as Leary snored softly beside them, and for the first time in her life, she let someone sit beside her, without fear, without walls, just silence. And maybe, just maybe, a beginning. The morning started quiet, too quiet. Kale was the first to notice it. Birds usually chirped on the roof at dawn. Delivery carts rumbled, past. But today there was only wind, and the distant hum of something large. She stood at the edge of the window, eyes sharp. Leary was still asleep, curled beside the heater. Jace stirred in the other room, still half dreaming. He didn't notice the sudden shift in the air, but Kale did. She had lived as prey too long not to feel when hunters were near. By midday, the silence broke. A low-pitched engine echoed through the colony. Not the usual cargo transports. This was heavier, more military. Jace looked out through his workshop window and frowned. A dark silver hover vehicle was parked near the colony gate. It wasn't human-made, alien armor, burned red symbol. He didn't recognize it, but Kale did. Her body stiffened. "They found me." "Who?" Jace asked. She grabbed Leary and pulled her close. "The ones who branded me. The soldier clans of Kaltareth. They're not bounty hunters, they're collectors." Jace's face darkened. "You said you escaped." "I did," she whispered. "But Kaltareth doesn't lose property. They chase it down." Jace stood up and moved quickly. "Stay here. I'll find out why they're here." Outside, Jace approached a small gathering of colony guards and one tall alien in black and crimson armor. The alien's face was cold, no expression, just mission. "I'm here under sector law," the alien said. "We're seeking a Class 3 fugitive, female, silver-skinned, branded." Jace felt his heartbeat slow. He kept his voice steady. "We don't have anyone like that here." The alien soldier scanned him. "You're the engineer?" "I am. Have you had contact with outsiders? Runaways? Scavengers?" "Only rusted machines and angry customers," Jace replied calmly. The alien handed a small hollow device to the guard. A picture flickered. Kyle, but younger, thinner, more frightened. "This is the target. She stole company property. Escaped with illegal offspring. She must be returned immediately." Jace's hands clenched, but he smiled. "You won't find her here." When he returned to his house, Kale was already packing. She had Leary wrapped in a bag and a small satchel on her back. Her eyes were glowing with fear. "I have to go," she said. "They'll search every home." "You're not leaving alone," Jace said. Kale paused. "Why would you risk that?" "Because I'd rather fight beside someone brave than live safely beside cowards." As night fell, Kale and Jace stood in the back of his house. He showed her a trapdoor under the floor. A hidden tunnel. "Long forgotten by most. It leads to the water pipes," he said. "They'll take you far out of the colony." She looked at him. "What about you?" "I'll cover your trail. Block the entry behind you." Leary coughed softly. Kyle picked her up. "Thank you, Jace," she whispered. He looked her in the eyes. "This isn't goodbye, just delay. I'll find you again." She didn't know if he was lying, but for the first time, she wanted to believe. Kale climbed into the tunnel. Jace handed her a flashlight, then hesitated. She turned back. He reached out not to grab, but to press something into her hand. It was a small charm made from broken machine parts, twisted into the shape of a star. "For Leary," he said. "To remind her she has friends on this world." Kale closed her hand over it. Then she did something she never thought she would. She leaned forward and gently touched her forehead to his. A sign of trust. From her people. Then she disappeared into the dark. Outside, the alien soldier paced through the colony with a scanner, red eyes glowing. The guards followed, confused and tense. They didn't want conflict, but they also feared breaking intergalactic law. Behind a building, Jace poured oil over the trapdoor and lit a small spark. The scent of fire and smoke filled the area. By the time the soldiers arrived, there was nothing left but ashes, no tunnel, no sign, just the quiet man in a smoke-stained coat standing in the dark, smiling faintly. The tunnel was cold. Damp water dripped from the ceiling as Kale moved carefully, one foot in front of the other. Her daughter pressed tightly to her chest. The light Jace had given her flickered, but she didn't stop, not even when the shadows moved. Not even when Leary whimpered in her sleep. The walls around her were made of old colony steel, forgotten maintenance routes that ran beneath the city like dead veins. Jace had told her, "No one remembers these passages. They're old, but they'll keep you alive." She hoped he was right. Behind her, every sound made her flinch. The echo of her own breath, the thud of her boots, even Leary's soft cough. Her body was sore. Her mind was sharp. She was not just a mother now. She was prey again. But not the same prey as before. This time, She wasn't running with fear alone. This time, someone had chosen her, protected her, and that changed everything. After nearly an hour of walking, Kale reached a broken vent. She stopped, rested her back against the wall. Her arms ached from holding Leary. She carefully laid her daughter down, wrapping her in cloth, and sat down beside her. She pulled out the small charm Jace had made, a tiny, star-shaped piece of scrap metal twisted into beauty. Leary opened her eyes. "Mama." Kale smiled weakly. "Shh, little light. We're okay." Leary saw the charm. "It's pretty." Kyle nodded. "A human made it. For you." Leary held it tight in her small hands and smiled, and Kale felt her chest hurt. Not from pain, from something warmer. But the warmth didn't last. Suddenly, a distant clang. Kale froze. Not just her imagination this time. Boots. Echoing. Somewhere in the tunnels behind her. They had found the vent entrance. Kale didn't wait. She picked up Leary and ran. The tunnel twisted sharply. She turned corners in the dark, her light now dimming. Her breath was loud, her muscles burning. Still she didn't stop. One wrong turn could mean a dead end. 1 second too slow and she'd lose everything. A voice echoed behind her, cold, metallic. "Kale of the brand, surrender. You are property of Keltereth." She ran faster. Then, light, faint, but real. A broken hatch ahead, leading upward. She pushed it hard. It groaned but didn't budge. She slammed her shoulder into it again, and again. Behind her, Boots came closer. She let out a growl and screamed, "Open, you useless thing!" With one final shove, it cracked. She burst through, falling into soft soil and bright moonlight. The air was cold, clean. They were out. The hatch slammed shut behind her. She turned and threw a rock onto the metal door, jamming it. It wouldn't stop them forever, but it would slow them. Kale looked up. They were in the outer farming district. She recognized the windmills, the fields of tall golden weeds, a place rarely visited, abandoned after the first colony drought. She had one shot. Jace had told her, "Go to the old windmill. Inside is an old comm unit. You can call a friend of mine. Tell him I sent you." She didn't trust it, but she had nothing else. 10 minutes later, she reached the windmill. It groaned in the wind. Leary was coughing again. Kyle placed her gently on a stack of cloth and began searching for the unit. She found it under a metal sheet. Dusty, old, but still had power. She pressed the green button. It crackled. Then a voice. "Yeah? Who the hell's—" She spoke quickly. "Jay sent me. He said you could help." There was a pause. "Is this Kale?" She froze. "Yes. I'm coming. Sit tight." The line went dead. Kale looked out the broken window. She could see lights in the tunnel field behind them. They were still coming. She wrapped her arms around Leary and sat in the shadows. Minutes passed. Too slow, too loud, too dangerous. She whispered in her daughter's ear, "If something happens to me, you keep running, okay?" Leary shook her head. "No, I stay with Mama." Kale smiled, tears in her eyes. "Stubborn like your father." Then an engine. Low. Growling. A black Land Cruiser pulled up fast, covered in dust. A tall man with metal arms stepped out. "You Kyle?" She nodded. "Get in." She hesitated. He pointed back. "Unless you want to wait for the soldiers behind. You." She climbed in with Leary. The vehicle sped away. As the wind whipped through the broken windows, Kyle clutched Leary and looked back. The tunnel mouth was far behind now. But her thoughts stayed there. With Jace, he had burned the entrance, bought her time, gave her hope. She whispered, "I'll come back for you." And this time, she meant it. The vehicle sped across the desert plains, far from the colony. Wind howled through broken vents, and sand slapped the windows like angry rain. Inside, Kale held Leary close, her body still tense, her eyes watching the horizon. The man driving said nothing at first. His face was hard, with deep scars and cybernetic lines running along his neck. But there was no cruelty in his eyes. Only experience. "You're lucky Jay still trusts people," he finally said. "I stopped doing that a long time ago." Kale stayed silent. Leary rested in her lap, whispering, "Mama, where are we going?" Kale smoothed her daughter's hair. Someplace new, someplace they wouldn't be hunted. By nightfall they arrived. It wasn't a city. It wasn't even a village. Just a hidden valley beyond the dunes protected by cliffs and camouflaged walls. Dozens of tents and metal huts stood scattered, their lights dim to avoid detection. Strange-looking beings, aliens of all kinds, even a few humans, moved quietly, watching with guarded eyes. "This is Haven," the driver said. "Not on any map, not part of any system, no names, no laws. Just survival. And second chances." He stopped the vehicle and turned to Kale. "Your name?" She hesitated. "Kyle," he nodded. "Not anymore." He handed her a small ID chip. "Choose something new, something that's yours." Kale looked at the chip. It blinked softly in her hand. The next days passed like dreams. No one asked questions. No one stared at her scars. No one cared what planet she came from or who branded her. She was just another face among the forgotten. But Leary blossomed. The color returned to her cheeks. She ran barefoot with other children, laughing in ways Kale had never heard before. She slept soundly each night, hugging the little star charm Jace had given her. Every time Kale saw that charm, her chest ached. Not from pain, from something she still couldn't name. One afternoon, a woman approached Kale at the water station. She was tall, with orange eyes and 2 braided horns. She wore a simple robe and smiled like someone who had learned peace the hard way. "You're new," she said. Kale nodded. "Someone said you came from the human side." "Yes." "Did you lose someone there?" Kale looked down. "I left someone behind." The woman touched her arm gently. "If they're good, they'll find you. If not, they weren't worth carrying with you." Kyle looked at the mountains beyond the valley, and for the first time, she hoped. That night, Kyle sat by the fire with Leary. The girl was drawing in the dirt, humming softly. Kale watched her, then reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the ID chip. She hadn't used it yet. She hadn't wanted to, but something in her had changed. She pressed the chip and entered a new name. Kayla Vire, a name not given by owners. Name not marked by pain. A name she chose. Her name. A week later, Kayla heard the news. A trader from the outer zones had arrived, whispering about trouble at the human colony. Something about a man who burned his own property to block a search party. A man who stood in front of soldiers and refused to betray a friend. A man who vanished after the fire. No one had seen him since. Kayla's hands shook when she heard it. She didn't cry. She just closed her eyes and whispered, "Jace." He had vanished so she could live. That night she went to the cliff edge alone. The stars were brighter here. The sky felt wider. She pulled the star charm from her daughter's pocket just for a moment and held it to her chest. "If you're out there," she whispered, "I'm still alive." The wind carried her words into the dark. "I'm still fighting." She closed her eyes. "I'm not running anymore." Weeks became months. Kayla Vire worked in Haven, building shelters, training others to fight, watching her daughter grow strong. She still wore the star charm on her belt. And every night she looked at the sky and remembered the man who gave her more than freedom. He gave her a future. Then one morning, a dusty traveler arrived at Haven's gate, tall, quiet, grease on his coat. The guards almost turned him away until the little girl near the well screamed, "Papa Jace!" Kayla dropped, the tools in her hand. She turned, and for the first time in her life, she ran toward someone.